Hello and welcome to your CPA Exam Game Plan. Today we're here to talk about how to conquer the exam in 3 months or 6 months or 9 months or 12 months depending upon your study schedule and a good way to motivate you to get through the CPA exam. A little bit of background on myself. My name is Philipp. I went to school in Los Angeles. I then worked at Deloitte and Touche in downtown LA way back when it was called the Big 8, then the Big 6, the Big 5, and now the Final 4. Worked there, got my CPA certificate, left there, started teaching CPA Review 25 plus years ago, and our job at Rogers CPA Review is to motivate you to help you accomplish your goal of passing the CPA exam. Today we're here to talk a little bit about setting up a game plan so you can properly prepare for the CPA exam itself. Now, we have a worldwide student base. We have students in Japan, in the Middle East, in South America. And one of the cool things with the CPA exam is they keep adding new countries, which means that it's great in the sense that you can take the exam globally, but also it makes your CPA certificate that much more valuable because the world is ever shrinking, right? It's getting a little smaller and smaller. In that case, what it means is having a U.S. CPA certificate suddenly gives you global recognition. We have partnerships with some of the top firms, organizations, state societies. We work with like Deloitte and Ernst and BDO and all these huge companies. We work with governmental agencies as well. We're the leading course for many, many reasons. First of all, we have the trademarked Roger method. And this is a great method where we're going through and teaching you CPA exam material. And I know a lot of times we call it a review course, but we don't expect you to remember anything from school because we realize that in school there's a lot of classes that are electives. I remember back in my day when I was in university and governmental accounting, for example, was an elective and I elected not to take it. So what did that mean? It meant that I needed to learn it in a review course. So in our review course, we make sure that we're teaching you the journal entries, the accounting for things. So you're not just reviewing, but you're actually learning it because again, believe it or not, there are lots of things that you've never yet seen in school. We need to make sure that you're familiar with those. We have the highest verified pass rate of about 88%, which means that if you do what we tell you to do, if you can stay motivated for those 300 to 400 hours of prep time, which we'll talk about later, we're going to get you through the exam. Also, unsurpassed value. Unsurpassed value just means that we will include everything you need in order to help you accomplish your goal of what? Of passing the CPA exam. Now, as far as your CPA exam game plan, we're going to look at, first of all, step 1, learning the CPA exam basics. So we're going to talk about what are the parts to the exam. What does it include for financial accounting and reporting, known as FAR and audit and reg and BEC? Understanding the exam study process, because I can feel the energy and excitement. You're saying, Raj, I want to become a CPA. What are the steps that I need to take to accomplish that goal? What are the steps to get me through that? That's understanding the entire study process. Setting your CPA exam goals, which means sitting down and saying, what is the goal? What do I want to get through? How am I going to get through that? And finally, applying and scheduling right away. And that's one of the things that we're always letting the students know is you want to get through this exam as early in your career as possible. Because I remember everyone's like, oh, I'm so busy, I'm in school, I'm this, I'm that. Once I start working, then I'll have more time. Guess what? Doesn't happen, right? Because you're working not 35 or 40 hours a week, but you may be working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, depending on where you are in your career. Therefore, it's difficult to find that time. So I always encourage people to pass the exam as early in your career as possible, meaning maybe between the time when you get out of university and maybe even the summer before you start your actual exam. Let's start out by talking about learning the CPA exam basics. Now, with the CPA exam, I like to start out by letting people realize, hey, it is not an IQ test. You do not have to be a genius to be a CPA, all right? If some of you are working right now, look around the office. Do those people look like geniuses? I don't think so. However, it's a test of discipline, which means if you study, you will pass. Our job is to motivate you for those hours in order to get you through the exam. And as I mentioned earlier, the AICPA says the average successful candidate spends about 300 hours preparing for the exam. That's the successful candidates. What that means is you need to set up a game plan to make sure that your time is properly used. Now, as far as the exam itself, it is a 14-hour experience. Okay, our job is to make this experience or adventure as painless as possible. There are 4 parts to the exam, and you can take them in any order that you choose. One of the parts is called auditing. And with the auditing part, auditing and attestation, it is a 4-hour exam. This includes planning the audit, internal controls, substantive testing, IT, information technology, SSARS, statements on standards for accounting and review services, so reviews, compilations, things like that. That is the stuff that I did, for example, at Deloitte. When I worked at Deloitte in downtown LA, what was our job? To go out there in the audit department and take the client's financial statements and rip them apart. So our job is to go through and at the very end, go ahead and draft the audit report, which is one of the things that we'll learn and gets tested. What does it say? In our opinion, the statements referred to above presents fairly in all material respects financial position of EXCO as of 12/31/2021, the results of its operations in conformity with U.S. GAAP or standards established or generally accepted in the United States. So that is what the audit report, for example, looks like. That is part of the audit exam. That is part of the 4 hours. You've got Financial Accounting and Reporting, or FAR, a long, long way to run. Was that Sound of Music? I think so. Anyway, what is in FAR? That includes your Intermediate 1, Intermediate 2, Advanced Government Nonprofit. So you've got your Intermediate 1 and 2, which shows your balance sheet, accounts receivable, percentage of credit sales, aging of AR. You've got your all the different things, pensions, leases, bonds, deferred taxes, contingent liabilities, consolidations. Woo, fun stuff. You've got things like governmental accounting. So we'll have to talk about accrual versus modified accrual. We've got nonprofit organizations, talking about the different types of financial statements there. So it takes all of those areas and squeezes it into what? A 4-hour adventure. That is what FAR, or Financial Accounting Reporting. Regulation, that is a 3-hour exam, and that includes tax, law, and professional responsibility and ethics. With your taxation, it includes your individual taxation, which is your 1040, Schedule A, B, C, D, E, F. You've got your 1120 corporate tax, 1120S, 1065 partnership, 6252 installments, 1041 estates, trust, gift, exempt organizations, 706, 709. All of that is part of taxation, which is on the regulation exam. It also includes business law, common law contracts, UCC, sale of goods, negotiable instruments, bankruptcy, Chapter 7, 11, 13, and so on. And then professional responsibilities and ethics, that would also make up about 20% of the regulation exam. 3-hour adventure. Then you've got BEC, which is Business Environment and Concepts. And back when I took the exam many moons ago, BEC parts of it, like economics, wasn't on the exam. They added that later on in life, but basically BEC is just the overall business environment and the concepts that relate to the environment. You've got things like macroeconomics, financial management, IT. A favorite area for a lot of us, cost accounting. It's back. Right? Cost accounting. That involves, building some direct materials, direct labor, factory overhead. What could go wrong with materials? Direct labor price variance, direct labor usage variance, overhead, spending, efficiency, volume variance analysis. We remember it, live it, love it, learn it. So all of those are part of the BEC, Business Environment and Concepts. As I mentioned earlier, entire exam is 14 hours in length, but you can take them. There's a 4-hour for audit, 4-hour for FAR, 3 hours for reg, 3 hours for BEC. So you can take them one at a time. You can take all 4 at once if you want. Back in our day, I sound like your parent, when I was your age, back in our day, we had to take all 4 parts within 3 days. Wednesday, half day, Thursday, all day, Friday, all day. You had to take all 4 parts. You had to pass at least 2 parts, and you had to get at least a 50% on the parts not passed, or you kept nothing. Therefore, there was a lot of stress in studying and preparing for all 4. Nowadays, you can study for a part, take a part, study for a part, take a part. So what's nice about that is in our day, we had to schedule our life around the exam. Now, you can kind of schedule the exam around your life, but as I warn you, be very careful because the time goes by quickly. And if you move into a firm, most firms will not promote you beyond senior, for sure, manager, until you've passed the exam. So it seems like, that's 5 years out. I got plenty of time. Don't worry about it. You really should. You want to get through it as early as possible. The other thing too is it's a highly academic exam. What I mean by that is the stuff you've been studying in school, whether you've seen it in school or not, your brain works a certain way. You're used to kind of reading it, interpreting it, narrowing out 2 of them, boom, I got A or C, which one? I think it's A, boom, move on. But in the real world, as you start working, people don't come up to you and say, hey Bob, I have a question. The second internal control structure, is it A, control environment, B, risk assessment, C, control. People don't do that, right? They say, here, solve this and give me a report. So your brain has to kind of be retaught how to read through, interpret, phase out or kick out a couple of the wrong choices, narrow it down to 2, and hopefully pick the right one. So that's why we encourage you to sit as close to graduation as possible, because of the fact that it's a highly academic exam. Now, as far as the exam format, first of all, you've got FAR, Audit, and Reg. With FAR, Audit, and Reg, you've got 60% multiple choice, 40% what we call TBS or task-based simulations. So the multiple choice, generally you have about 4 different choices, and that's 60% of it. So for FAR and Audit, which are 4 hours, you have 90 questions in total, 30, 30, 30. Then you'll have 7 task-based simulations. Now with task-based simulations, there are 7 of them. 1 is pre-tested, so 6 are graded. Of the 6, generally at least 1 of them is a research question for FAR, Audit, and Reg. Now Reg is shorter, therefore instead of 90 questions, it has 72. 24, 24, 24, 3 testlets. And instead of 7, it has 6 task-based problems, of which 1 is not tested, not graded, pre-tested only. Of the 5, generally 1 is research. So, and these problems, and we'll talk about timing in the course, but you've got maybe about a minute and a quarter, minute and a half per multiple choice to stay on target. And you've got about 15 minutes per TBS, task-based simulation. And back in our day, we had an hour-long problem, 4 of them, plus we had about 60 multiple choice. I think it was 60 or 90. But the point is, we had about an hour to do a problem. So if they gave you a cash flow problem, they could ask you operating, investing, financing, do the whole darn thing. Have a great day. Nowadays, they'll take a piece of it because you've only got about 15 minutes to get it done. Because in order to stay on target so you don't run out of time, again, you have a countdown clock, 4 hours, 3:59, 3:58, and your heart starts racing. So you've got to watch that countdown clock carefully. So part of the exam is really good time management. The BEC exam is 85% multiple choice, 15% what we call written communication or essays. With the 85%, because again, BEC is only a 3-hour exam, a 3-hour tour, the weather starts, this is Gilligan's Island, back in my childhood. But BEC is 85% multiple choice, so you've got 72, 24, 24, 24, and written communication, you'll have 3 of them where you have to write an essay, a beginning, a middle, and an end, and of the 3, 2 are graded. So that makes about 15% of your score. But again, it's important to realize that that's the way each part is set up. Once you pass a part, you keep that part for 18 months. So that means once you pass a part, you have about 18 months or a year and a half in order to get through the remaining parts. Otherwise, you lose that first part. Now, if 18 months goes by, you don't lose everything, you just lose the first, and then and so on. So it's within that 18-month period, then you should be fine, and then you get to keep those parts. As far as the testing windows, back in my day, it was twice a year, May and November. 3 days in May, 3 days in November, that was it. So you took the exam, 3 months later, you got an envelope. If it was a big envelope, it was a reapplication. If it was a little envelope, good news. So I remember, working at Deloitte, people would walk around with their little envelope going, hey, I got an envelope. Did you get yours? And everyone with the big ones going, no, I haven't heard anything yet. And they're trying to hide. Nowadays, nobody really knows when you pass. Because as you take the exam, the results then come out about 20 days after they take like the first 20 days and then they release them, and another 20 days and release them, another 20 days. So they'll release them generally like 3 or 4 different times within a testing window. Now, when can you take the exam? As I said, in our day, May and November. Nowadays, you can book it like a doctor's appointment. You can take it 8 months a year. So months January, February are open, and then months March 3, 6, 9, and 12 are blackout months. There's no exam. The other 8 months, you can take 1 or 2 or 3 or all 4 parts. So it's up to you. So as I said, you can go ahead and say, I'm going to take 1 part in February and book it, and then start preparing for that. Or you can go ahead, and we have a lot of international students that might come in and take 2 and then take another 2. So it's up to you. But realize that months 3, 6, 9, and 12, there's no exam. They're retooling it, testing it, and checking the software. The other 8 months, you can take 1, 2, 3, or 4. You just can't take the same part in the same window more than once. For example, I couldn't take audit in January and then again in February if I didn't pass it. No, but I could take it in January and then again after the next window, which would be then April, May, or July, August, or October, November. So that's the way that the windows are set up as far as how I can sit and when I can sit for the exam. So that's the first part, which is really just trying to understand the exam itself. Step 2 says understanding the exam study process. So what that means is sitting down and saying, okay, my goal is to get through this. What do I need to do that? As I said earlier, the AICPA says average successful candidate's about 300 plus hours. 300 hours. So if I'm going to take a part in 2 months, I've got to stick in a bunch of time. Let's say I want to sit for all 4 parts in 3 months. That means I've got to stick 300 hours in the next 2.5 to 3 months. I have to have a really good study plan set up. All right. Now, as far as the study strategies, you want to start right away. What I mean by that is don't put it off and say, oh, I'll start working for a year and then you won't have time. So you want to get through this, jump right into it as early in your career as possible. Now, as far as study strategies, FAR generally takes the longest time, and with FAR, it could take like 120 to 160 hours of prep time. That includes lecture time, reviewing time, reading, and then the most important is applying the material to actually working through the software and working through all of the different questions, so that way you get the repetition, because the repetition, question after question after question, that's what's going to get you through it. Our job is to teach you the concepts so you understand pension expense, but we'll teach you memory aids or mnemonics to help you remember, like the itsy bitsy spider. How do you calculate pension expense, pension cost, service cost, prior service costs, SPI, interest, deferred gain, excess amortization, actual return on plan assets, spider. So those are the memory aids or mnemonics that help you to pull that out of your head in the minute and a half you have in order to answer the multiple choice. But in order to do that, you need to allow enough preparation time. So FAR takes the longest, Reg would take the next amount, maybe 100 hours, auditing figure about 80 to 100 hours, and then BEC probably 50 to 70 hours. So when you look at all of that, figure, and we like to say about 2 hours of study time for every hour of lecture. So if I'm watching a 2-hour lecture on pensions, I've got probably about 6 hours of homework, which includes reading, going through actual AICPA problems, multiple choice, task-based simulations, and we're the only course that actually goes through a task-based simulation problem in every lecture. So that way you're really comfortable with the material and the concepts. One of the things with a TBS, it's kind of like a bunch of multiple choice squeezed together into a long problem. So if you can understand the multiple choice, that's great, but you've got to understand the task-based problems as well, because that's part of making sure that you're properly prepared to get through the entire exam. Now we talk about creating your personal study planner, and what that means is we'll set up a 3, 6, 9, or 12-month study planner for you. You need to take a look at yourself, your life, and say which one's going to work best for me. Is my goal to get through all 4 parts in 3 months, in 6 months, 9 months, and so on? So for example, it says, first of all, take our suggestions, which means build a plan and stick to it. And what I mean by that, I remember back in the day when I was a scuba diver, they would say, plan your dive and dive your plan. What does that mean? It means plan your dive. I'm going to go to this depth for this length because you don't want to run out of air. However, once you're down there, plan and dive the plan that you set up. So plan your dive, dive your plan. Same thing here. This is a process where I've got to sit down and say, my goal is to get through 4 parts in 3 months or 6 months. I need to set up a plan. What we will do is we'll provide you with study planners, and you can customize it to your own personal study schedule. 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. And we'll talk about the plan that applies best to you, because you've got to look at your life and say, okay, what are my goals? What do I have going on in my life? I've got work, I've got life, I've got friends, I've got 3.25 kids, I've got a wife, and I have, so you've got to kind of schedule that accordingly. Also, what happens, what's nice, is they're completely customizable to your personal study schedule, and we'll kind of push you along. We'll send you reminders, like every day, every week. Hey, are you studying? It's like your mom, right? But we need to do that to kind of keep pushing you along. How's your studying? We'll know that if you have not logged on and watched some of your lectures lately, we're going to start pushing you a little bit. Hey, listen, there's 27 days to your exam. Study. Hey, I know there's a big party this weekend. Study. You don't have time. So that's where your mom comes in. Also, we'll incorporate your study schedule into your daily planner. So that way, making sure that you have the time to properly get through it. So let's say, for example, we were to look at a 6-month study planner. We'll set it up and we'll say, okay, here are the lectures you're going to look at. This is the homework that you need to do. Plus, we have what we call our questions that are our IPQs, our interactive practice questions that are included in the course. What that means is you've got 5,000, 6,000 questions that as you're watching the lecture, as you're going through, then you can immediately go to that area and start watching the questions, start studying the questions, taking the questions. It'll grade you, test you, tell you where you're strong, tell you where you're weak, take sample exams, and so on. So the way the lecture is set up, let's say, for example, and what we do is when you come into the lecture, we assume you remember nothing about accounting. Okay, and we're rarely disappointed because we realize how most of you got through school. You memorize, take the exam, whoosh, blow it out your brain and go, I'll never need that again. Well, you will for the CPA exam. But what we've done is we've gone through and we set up the lectures with the books where we summarize, we simplify, we cut out the fat. So we'll walk you through the lecture step by step. But instead of like an intermediate book where it's 50 pages long in a chapter, we're going to summarize, simplify it, cut out the fat, focus you on the stuff that is consistently, heavily tested year after year after year. So we'll summarize, simplify, focus you in it, give you these memory aids, so that way as you're going to the exam and they say, is it an operating lease or a capital lease? Capital lease, TT, BPO, 75 or 90, title transfers, bargain purchase, lease term 75% or more of its useful life, present value minimum lease payments. So these memory aids or mnemonics really make the difference when you've only got a minute and a quarter, minute and a half to narrow the question from 4 down to 1 choice. So that's one of the things. So as you're going through the lectures, you'll see in your study planner that we've set it up. We tell you how long it is, because what we've found is everybody likes what we call a bite-sized lecture. So instead of having a 4-hour lecture, let's break it up into 20 to 30-minute bite-sized niblets. Delicious. So you can watch part of leases and then apply that. Watch a little bit more of leases and then apply that. That way you see how it comes together. Then we'll go through actual CPA exam questions and solutions together. We'll go through actual task-based simulations together. Then you go to the IPQs, the interactive practice questions, and there we've got thousands of questions, hundreds of task-based simulations, many written communications, so you can practice them. Then you go, wow, now I understand leases. One topic down, 54 to go. But that's how you're going to get through it. So with these study planners, we'll set it up and say, okay, are you looking for a 3-month, a 6-month, a 9-month? And we'll walk you through it. In taking a closer look, what we'll do is we'll walk you through and say, okay, on this day, this is what you need to accomplish. Maybe take the next day off. Then on this day and so on. So we'll kind of walk you through it so as you get closer to the exam, you have a schedule, a structure to stick by that will get you through the exam. Then at the end, maybe finish a week early so you have time to review. We also have things called an exam cram, which is a great 8 to 15-hour review of each part. 8 hours for audit and reg and BEC and FARs, like 15 hours because there's so much material. But it's a great review of all the material that's going to be hitting that part of the exam in a short period of time, which is a really nice way to see it. So it's a good way to realize. One of the things we need to do, though, is to make sure that we've set up your study schedule. So that way it's easy for you to follow. Now it's your job to sit down, watch the lectures, and apply the material. But what's important to realize is that if you're bored in class, you're not going to study. If we can somehow keep you motivated, excited, if we can make pensions as exciting for you as it is for me, then you're going to get through the exam. That's where the memory aids and mnemonics come in, because it really helps you to get through all of the material in a timely manner. Step 3, set your CPA exam goals. So you sit down and say, okay, what is my goal? Do I plan to get through the exam in 3 months or 6 months or 9 months or 12? Well, a couple of things to look at. First of all, I'm going to work at a firm where if I pass within a year, they're going to give me a huge bonus, ka-ching, then I need to get through it in 12 months. Why don't we plan 9? That way I've got some cushion in case I don't pass something. But that's important to look at because I don't want to forfeit or give up that bonus. I want to make sure I qualify. So 3 months. With the 3 months, that means you're going to finish all 4 sections in one testing window. That means you're going to start studying in a blackout month. So let's say March. Then I'm going to try to get through it in a 3-month window so that way I can get through all 4 of the parts. So a lot of my international students will do this and so on because maybe they only want to fly in once because it's so expensive. This would be for the intense studiers only. That means I'm really intense, I've got no life, I've got no work, I've got no friends, which a lot of us have, but it's a good way to realize that I'm going to have to be focused. barely any days off. So you're really squeezing a lot in. Because think of it this way. You're trying to squeeze, what, about 300 hours into 3 itty-bitty teensy-weensy months. That means I better make sure that I've really set up a schedule and stick to it. Finally, your goal is to finish in a short period of time. A lot of times people will use this, especially if they're preparing over the summertime. So let's say the upcoming summertime, you want to prepare for it. I remember before I went to work, I graduated college in like June, and then I went to Europe for 3 months with my old girlfriend. I don't know where she is now or who she's married to. But anyway, and then moved on and then started work at Deloitte in September. Well, a lot of people will take that summertime and say, well, those 3 months, I'm going to get through all 4 parts. So again, we're going to work with you whether it's 3, 6, 9, or 12-month schedule, whatever works best for you. As far as the 6-month schedule, here you're going to finish all 4 parts in 2 testing windows, so in about 6 months. It's a challenge, but it's very reasonable. In other words, it's something that you can definitely conquer. It allows you a little bit more of a balance, so you can have a little bit more time off. And again, we're going to try to maybe finish 2 sections in one window, maybe summer, and 2 sections in another. So it's important to do that. As I said earlier, it's a highly academic exam, so you don't want to wait too long because you stop remembering, how do I go through and analyze, is it A, B, C, or D? Those are, again, those skills that you learned in school. We don't want to lose those. We've got also a 9-month program that's kind of in between, and then a 12-month. 12-month says I want to finish all 4 in 4 testing windows. You kind of let the CPA exam work around your schedule. As I said earlier, generally, like in my day, we had to schedule our life around the exam. With the 3 or 6 month, you've got to schedule your life around the exam. With a 12-month, you can kind of schedule the exam a little bit more around your life, so you can study for a part, take a part, study for a part, take a part. So that might be a little easier on your marriage, for example. If you're married, your kids, you might get to see them instead of taking a year off and so on. So it allows you, again, to focus in on that one part. But again, I keep emphasizing, and we hear this from the professors as well, that say, hey, remind our students not to put it off. Remind them, take the exam as soon as possible. Because again, you want to jump into that process early on. Now, set your CPA exam goal time. So that means sitting down and asking yourself a few questions. Okay, do you plan to travel over the summer? Well, I did, but maybe now after hearing this, I'll readjust accordingly. What's going to work? What is your work schedule going to look like, and what's going to work for me? So what does my work schedule look like? In other words, is this busy season? I'm in public January, February, March, crazy busy. Maybe that's not the 3 months that I want to study because I'm not going to have any time. Do I want to take a break in between sections, maybe balance it out? What is my financial situation like? Can I afford to take 3 months off of life and study, or do I have to stretch it out over 6 to 9 to 12 months? Also, family. Do I have any? Do I want any? Do I want to see them ever? That's part of budgeting and scheduling as well, because again, we want to make sure that you've allowed enough time in your life to get through that. Some final study tips. I always suggest study with a buddy, a study buddy. And this is what I did in school. And actually, I always suggest study with someone who's not as smart as you, and here's why. Because I remember studying, and my buddy and I, we would go to the library and lock ourselves in and just do our own thing. But if he had a question, he would ask me. If I had a question, I would ask him. When he would ask me a question, you think you really understand something until you try to explain it to somebody else. That's when I try to explain it, and then they go, well, why? Why? What? Like my little kid. Why? Why? And you go, well, because that's a good question. Then you realize I didn't understand the material quite as well as I thought. So again, my suggestion, get with somebody, because then every time you're giving up the weekend or late at night or something, you don't feel like you're the only one giving up your life. You're going through it with someone else. So what I used to do is study at night on my own, and then on the weekend we'd meet at the library and just kind of study on our own, but have someone to fall back on. If we couldn't figure it out, then we'd go to the Homework Help Center and ask the moderator, hey, we both looked at question 27. We thought it was C. Why is it B? Please explain. Another thing, start studying early in the morning. And here's what I suggest. I would suggest get up at like 4 in the morning. You're like, 4? What are you, crazy? Get up at 4 because the world is sleeping. It's so quiet, right? You could live in a big, huge city and it's still quiet, except for the garbage men early up. So get up early in the morning because you're fresh. You study from 4 to 7, get showered, get ready, go to work. By 3, 4 in the afternoon, you're falling asleep at your desk. But guess what? You're still on payroll, okay? So the hard part is when you come home at night and try to study from 6 to 9 at night, it's tough. So if you can adjust your schedule just for those 3 to 6 months, get up early and study, trust me, it's going to be much more efficient. They've done studies. They also say start studying at the same time every day. So get up at 4 in the morning, study right away. The first day it takes till 4:45 to start studying. The next day 4:30. The next day 4:15. Finally 4 o'clock you're studying at 4. So if you get up at the same day or the same time and start studying, they've done studies and found that it works much more efficiently. Set your priorities, which means what are my priorities to get me through the study and how am I going to get through it? Taking advantage of the 24/7 Homework Help Center. This is great because it's a full service course. It's not like here's material, go study, have a nice life. Instead, it's like, I don't understand pensions, please explain this. I don't understand this solution, please explain it. So we're there to hold your hand and help you understand things, especially if you've never seen them in school. Maybe you don't understand governmental accounting, that's what the lecture's for. But I still had a couple of questions about accrual versus modified accrual. Who do I turn to? That's the Homework Help Center. Also, stay calm. Stay focused, stay motivated, and we will see you through the exam. Remember, you can do this. It's not an IQ test. It is a test of discipline. If you put in the hours, if you study, you will pass. That's what we're here to do to help you accomplish those goals. Another step, apply and schedule when? Right away. Now, what does that mean? It means start the application process right away. Check your state requirements, and you can do that by looking at our website, rogerscpareview.com. You want to apply as soon as possible. That means as soon as you're eligible. Now, what are the eligibility requirements? Most states say you have to have a degree. Most states say you have to have at least 120 semester units or 180 quarter units, and certain classes like 24 units in accounting or 24 units in business and so on. But you want to start as early as you can. Why? Because you're still in a student-centered mindset. As I said earlier, it's a highly academic exam, makes it easier to study and prepare for the exam. You get a jump start before you start working. Because again, once you start working, trust me, your life is no longer yours. All right? You'll be working for the rest of your life. Unless, hey, I remember always hearing this. How do you get wealthy? Earn it. A lot of work. Inherit it. Ain't gonna happen to me. Or marry it. Too late for me. So again, what does that mean? It means get a jump start on your career so you too can earn it. You're still looking for a job? It looks great on your resume to say successfully completed all 4 parts of the uniform CPA exam. Also, because the application process, depending on who you're applying through, if you're going through NASBA, it might take 2 weeks. If you go through your State Board of Accountancy, it might take 6 to 8 weeks. So you want to make sure that you start the process early as possible. So you go on, you apply online. Generally costs about $100 to $200 for the initial application, and most states are about a $50 to $100 repeat fee. So the first time costs about $200 to apply for maybe 1, 2, 3, or 4 parts, plus you have to pay a per part fee as well, which I'll talk about in a minute. NASBA versus non-NASBA states. NASBA states, I don't know, changes daily. Let's say there's 35 of the 55 jurisdictions. So let's say 35 are NASBA, which takes about 2 weeks to apply and get your notice to schedule, whereas the non-NASBA are about 6 to 8 weeks. You want to send the transcripts, in this case, to the state board. Then you get your ATT, your authorization to test. What that means is they looked at your transcripts, they looked at your application, they said, yes, you qualify to sit for the exam. Now we're going to give you 90 days to tell us which parts you want to sit for and pay for that you're going to sit for in the next 6 to 12 months, depending on which state you're in. As far as the fees, the exam fees are anywhere from about $175 to $200 a part. The 4-hour exams are more expensive, about $200, audit and FAR. The shorter exams are less expensive, Reg and BEC, let's say roughly $175. So you're out about, let's say, $800. Now, you don't have to pay all $800 at once. Only pay for the parts you plan to sit for in the next, let's say, 6 to 9 months. So if I'm going to get a 6-month notice to schedule, if I'm going to take all 4 in 6 months, pay for all 4. But if you're not sure, pay for 2. You pay your $100 to $200 application fee. You pay about another $175 to $200 a part. I pay for 2 parts. If you then decide that you want to add another part, then it's a reapplication, about $50, and then you pay for the part. Here's the problem. If you pay for all 4 parts, like $730 up front, if you don't sit within your notice to schedule time period, you forfeit the money. You don't get it back. It's not, the state board will say, thank you very much for your donation. We appreciate it. but you can't get a refund. So what I say is sign up for 2, and then if you want to add more, it takes about a week or 2 because they already have your transcript. You've already been pre-approved, so that's the suggestion I would make. Then you receive your notice to schedule. The notice to schedule means that now you can schedule within the exam testing windows for the parts that you paid for. Now, in most states, your NTS, notice to schedule, is good for 6 months. So that means that if you don't plan to sit for them within 6 months, don't pay for all 4, pay for 2 or 3. You can always add more. California, for example, has 9 months. Some states have 12 months, but a majority are 6 months, which means whatever you sign up and pay for, hey, you got to sit for within 6 months. Otherwise, the fees are forfeited. Make sure the name on your NTS and your photo ID exactly match. There have been people that show up and they got married, they didn't change their name and so on. Things didn't match up, they couldn't sit. People show up without a copy of their notice to schedule, they won't let you in the exam. Schedule your exam with Prometrics, which Prometrics is open generally 6 days a week. They're all over the United States, they're all over the country, they're all over the world. That's why the exam's gone global, because you can take the exam in Japan, the Middle East, and South America, and Europe. And so the exam is growing as far as where you can take it. I'm assuming most of you will take it, let's say, in the United States. That's fine, but it's 6 days a week, generally Monday through Saturday. Usually Sunday they're not giving that exam. So you go to this testing center called Prometrics, you walk in, they give you a little booth, a cubby, you put everything in the locker, just go in, get fingerprinted, walk by, sit down, then you log on. You have 3 screens, welcome, I agree, I agree, I agree. You've got about 10 minutes to get through those. Boom, you start. Countdown clock starts, 4 hours, 3:59, then your heart's racing, 3:58, 3:57, now you're taking the exam. So you book it at a place called Prometrics. Take the exam, and then you receive your scores. As I mentioned earlier, they generally release the scores in 3 different windows. So let's say I'm taking it the first 20 days of January, then they start to release the scores about 10 days later. And then if I take it day 21 to 40 or 41 to 60, and so on. So they'll generally release them in 3 to 4 different times throughout that window. As I said earlier, with their Prometrics testing centers, they're open all over the country, all over the world, and again, you want to arrive early. Remember, what is it, Murphy's Law? Anything that can happen will happen. I remember when I took the exam, I was driving in LA to take the exam. I left early, right? There's always stories of people getting flat tires, car accidents, speeding tickets, and so on. Get there early, show up on time, study in the car, study in mass transit, whatever. Get in, go sit for the exam. So again, you want to plan and schedule it earlier. As I said, you'll be taking it at what we call the different centers, Prometric Center. As far as requirements of licensure, now there's 2 things where people get confused. What does it take to sit? What does it take to get certified? What does it take to sit? As I said, in most states, a degree with, let's say, 24 to 30 units of accounting, 24 to 30 units of business. Degree meaning 120 semester, 180 quarter units to sit. What does it take to get certified or licensure? Most states now require 150 semester or 225 quarter units. Not to sit, but to get certified. Some states, yes, you need 150 to sit. Many of them are going back to 120 to sit, but 150 to get certified. So that says the units that you need in order to get certified. Anything you get before, during, or after, that would count. Pass the exam, then you need experience. A lot of the states that have 150 say you need 1 year of work under the supervision of a licensed active CPA. What does active mean? It means that they've kept their certificate active in their state, which means that maybe they've met there in California. I think you need 80 hours every 2 years, a minimum of 20 hours a year. So you got to do 20 hours. So as long as they're quote unquote active, because you can reapply as active or inactive. Although if you're inactive, I can't call myself a CPA on my business card, so I want to be active. So again, you need to make sure you're working under their supervision. If you want to know exactly what the requirements are in your state, again, go ahead and check out the website at rogercpareview.com, and you'll get more information there as far as what the actual requirements are. Now, that, my friends, is what? That is your CPA exam game plan. What does it include? First of all, learning about the basics of what is included in the CPA exam, understanding the exam study process, which says, hey, I want to get from step A to step Z. What do I need to do? What do I need to accomplish to get through it? Setting your CPA exam goals. So I want to get through it in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. I want to get that bonus at the new job I have. What do I need to do to accomplish it? And then applying and scheduling right away to make sure that you can fit in the exam within the time frame allowed. Now, if you have any questions at all, do not hesitate to contact us. You can reach us again via social media. For example, if you have any questions, you can tweet a question at, hey, #RogerHelp. You can write on our Facebook wall, follow us on LinkedIn. We have blog posts. Make sure you sign up for those because there's all this exciting stuff ever changing in the exam. They're talking about all these new upcoming changes as well. So follow us as well to make sure that you can see it. Email us as needed. Also follow us on YouTube. Check out the different videos. Also check out my dating game, the Roger CPA dating game from 1980 something. I don't remember. I had a big fro back then, back in the day. So that is, again, some of the different ways that you can follow us. Again, remember, the CPA exam is definitely something you can conquer. If you study, you will pass. It is not an IQ test. But again, you need to put in those hours, and then you too will pass the CPA exam and have a successful career as a CPA. Again, thank you very much for your time and have a fabulous career in accounting.